Tesla may be leaving Hardware 3 cars with full self-driving in the dust in favor of the newer Hardware 4 cars. For years, people have been paying quite a bit of money on the promise that Tesla is going to deliver full self-driving in their cars all the way and up to being a robo-taxi, where it can take your car anywhere you want to go without you needing to do anything. Now, the software has been getting better and better over time, and the current version 12 is the best version yet. However, something has changed, and it might not be good for a good chunk of Tesla owners. So what is all this Hardware 3 versus Hardware 4 stuff anyway? Well, we're talking about the computer inside the car that controls everything from everything you see on the screen to how full self-driving actually works. Now, Hardware 3 is the third generation of FSD computer, and it shipped somewhere between 2019 and 2023 for most cars, and as late as January 2024 for the Model 3. Hardware 4 is much more than a computer upgrade. It was also an upgrade to all of the cameras. Reports are that Hardware 4 has upwards of 8 times the compute based on the old Hardware 3. And the cameras are also a much higher resolution, and you can see in much more detail. In fact, they are twice the resolution in both dimensions. Now let's talk about how full self-driving works. Until version 12, most of how full self-driving worked was what they call hard programmed. They had to actually teach the computer what a stop sign was, what a roundabout was. Well, when version 12 came out, Tesla touted that they eliminated over 300,000 lines of code and replaced it with AI. But the challenge is that these AI models need to be trained with lots and lots of data, and they need to be validated on the cars before getting released to the fleet. Up until recently, FSD was being developed and trained for Hardware 3 cars and newer. Now, when a new version came out, it was released to all the cars with Hardware 3 or greater, less the Cybertruck, which they're still waiting for it. However, with the latest 12.5 update, Hardware 3 owners have been left out in the cold. Now, right now, most Hardware 3 cars have version 12.3.6. Both of my Model Ys have exactly that version. Now, some of them have 12.4, and this is the version without the nag. However, when 12.5 came out, Elon stated that they were going to be prioritizing Hardware 4 because this particular version has so much more parameters that are being controlled by AI, and that this needed to be optimized for Hardware 3 and validated separately. He estimated in that post on X that it would be about 10 days to make that happen. Well, that post was on July 29th, and as you're watching this video, we're a lot further out than 10 days. There have also been a flurry of updates to 12.5 over the last couple of weeks, but only to Hardware 4 cars, leaving Hardware 3 owners sitting on the sideline wondering if they're ever going to see an update. Well, social media has been all over the place, everywhere from doom and gloom and Hardware 3 is dead, all the way to your typical FSD cheerleaders saying no problem, it's going to make it to robo-taxi status. Many are saying that the install base for Hardware 3 is simply too big for Tesla to ignore. But is it? Well, to find out, we have to look at the numbers. Now, before we jump into the numbers, just like Tesla updates being totally out of your control, so is the idea of having your data or identity stolen. Now, a few years back, I got a cell phone bill for 6 new iPhones that I didn't purchase. I had no idea what they came from. And as it turns out, that was my first step in figuring out that my identity had been stolen. And getting that all undone was a major pain. So when it was all said and done, I had over $7,000 in fraudulent charges I had to wrestle with all on my own. Since then, there has been a huge increase in identity theft because big companies simply can't keep our data safe. Recently, AT&T revealed that nearly all of its customers' call and text records had been exposed in a massive data breach. So what can you do to protect yourself? Well, I use Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura will alert me if they find my phone number or any other sensitive information has been compromised. And they'll give me fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to use the data to access my credit card or bank accounts. Aura also does so much more in keeping my family safe, like transaction monitoring, VPNs, antivirus, password monitoring, parental controls, and identity theft insurance. And I get this all in one app at one affordable price. I can also get their AI-powered call assistant that will pick up unknown calls on my behalf and screen them for spam or scams. And it protects me from harmful text messages by filtering out known spam numbers and scanning links and messages for phishing threats. Now, I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches again. And if you don't want to either, you can go over to Aura.com/Iowa Tesla Guy and try it yourself for free for 2 weeks. You'll find a link in the description below. Thank you so much for Aura for sponsoring today's video. Let's take a look at the breakdown of the Tesla fleet. Now, these numbers aren't exact, but they are close enough in macro terms. To date, Tesla has shipped about 5.7 million cars worldwide, and it's growing every single day. Of those cars, currently about 60% are hardware 3, with only about 30% being hardware 4. That works out to about 3.4 million cars with hardware 3, and that's a big number. However, we need to look at this a little closer because FSD is currently only available in the US. So with that, we need to narrow our focus. In the US, there are about 2.5 million Teslas on the road. The breakdown of hardware 3 versus 4 is about the same based on published reports. So 60% of the US cars on the road have hardware 3, and that works out to be about 1.5 million cars. And that's still a big number. However, let's look at what percentage of these cars actually purchased or are subscribed to full self-driving. Now, the numbers are a little sketchy, and Tesla isn't really forthcoming with all of this data, but reports are that it is somewhere between 10 and 15% of the fleet have subscribed or purchased FSD. Now, for the benefit of the doubt, let's assume 15% is the number. So with that, it works out to be only 250,000 hardware 3 cars that actually use FSD. And this works out to be only 10% of the total US fleet. So for me, if you look at it in those terms, it might not be too big of a leap for Tesla to just cut the cord on hardware 3 altogether. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, and I will also note that as of this video, all hardware 3 cars Tesla produced can still subscribe or purchase FSD. However, if that day comes where Tesla removes the ability for hardware 3 cars to purchase that option or subscribe to that option, then the path will be clear. Now, my bet is that Tesla is going to drop the V12 numbering naming convention for its software and pivot to software versioning that matches the computer. So hardware 4 and hardware 3 will be on completely different software tracks, and it will be nearly impossible to compare them or know what's included in one and not the other. This will give Tesla the freedom to limit the capability and features of hardware 3 in their cars as they see fit. Now, my best guess, and I hope I'm wrong, is that Tesla is going to walk away from hardware 3 perhaps sooner rather than later and do it as quietly as possible. So what do you think? Is FSD dead or dying in hardware 3? Is it as good as it's ever going to be? I really hope I'm wrong, but the tea leaves seem to be pointing in that direction. Now, if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. And while you're down there, tap that like button. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.